Hey guys, we are back for part two of the, you know, updated for Arena character rankings list. Um, let's keep going. This is the last one had all the fighters, range, and support. This one's gonna feature the assassins, mages, and tanks. So let's get going. For those who didn't watch the first video, I list them alphabetically and have kind of hidden over here to the right. I have my ranking so that it's like kind of hidden, but obviously if you can put two and two together, you might get a rough idea just based on me going over them here, but a little bit of suspense. All right, first, Gollum. His abilities sync super well together, with the dodging and healing and just it's great for scenario. Great for scenario. He is squishy AF, but he's like he puts out so much damage, especially when you are able to sync him. The main sync his ability right with the poison, but if you don't have basically like Shelob ready to go, then you're not going to get the most out of him. If you do have Gollum, you probably have Shelob, because unless you got Gollum to his recent event, you only have Gollum if you either saved up gems and got lucky, or more likely you paid to get him. Especially if you have him develop past 4-star, you paid some money, so that means you certainly have Shelob too. Melee, super squishy, but does have some sustain built into him. And there's a lot of sync with his abilities. His stun helps reduce incoming damage to him, right? So he's able to get in a couple more hits. Maybe that finishes off a character that he was close to, killing, or it allows you to, get your tank with the taunt to fill up their ability meters, so now they can use their taunt. Or, Gimli, if it's not activatable, it gives them time to kind of randomly proc his taunt. There's Gollum. Idril, I gave her the, again, damage output is great, but just with no AoE situation. He does have one move that kind of allows him to move quickly, so that helps since he's melee, but really, like, AoEs are better for if you're doing the auto clears. And again, for people who didn't watch the first one, I feel like that's nobody, but just in case, this is for if you're someone who's really wanting to maximize like all the experience you can get, and you actually have the time and ability to like run all of your like gear runs or whatever on auto, because you just have like good enough characters to clear that content, and so you don't raid, you do that because it is more effective. It is more effective if you have the time. So that's what the scenarios on auto is. Clearing scenarios is like, hey, this is the first time I'm clearing it. These enemies almost certainly have more power. Whenever you see kind of like they're the power of the enemy, which is the power of your party, and then the arena, so the co-op arenas we've been doing. Next, we have Idril, very accessible. One of those 6 super accessible free-to-play characters. It's really easy to coordinate her first ability with Baranor, who is another very accessible and good. He's a great free-to-play character. Main thing is you can't get the first ability bonus against arena bosses, and she is melee. She's more tanky than like some of the alternatives, but she is still pretty squishy as an assassin. So gave her a 2 for clearing scenarios, just because the coordination is really simple and it's with a very accessible character and another like good character to build. It's not like, oh well, now I'm gonna build Shelob just so she can work well with Gollum, or vice versa. Now I'm going to build Gollum because now I have a Shelob. You're almost certainly going to be building Baranor, and so that works well. Okay, Lothariel. Basically, the advantage is that she's super accessible. She's not particularly good at anything, though. Her damage output is not stellar. She's super squishy, melee character. Overall, she's still just like I don't know. I might even go back and like adjust where I have Torvin. I'm a big Torvin hater, and be real, but these are not both of these characters are characters you should not be worrying about too much. Torvin's first ability, it can break enemy channels with good timing. Like, so if you get that down and you can kind of predict, oh, the tank's about to use his taunt or something like that, you can actually break that, which is killer. That's essentially you're negating that opponent's ability to like you like remove them having a primary ability. That's awesome. However, he exposes himself. He knocks the enemy out of range, which reduces your DPS output unless you've like really well timed it and like placed it. And that usually would require getting him into position, which means that he's not doing damage, he's moving, and he has no abilities to improve his survivability. I don't love Torvin. The main thing that puts Lothariel over Torvin is just that she has better synergy by being, a human, free peoples, all that, and Torvin's dwarf. Say lovey. So let's go ahead to the rankings. This is one of those, I talked about this in the last one. If there's basically a tie, I'll use accessibility as the tiebreaker. It's easier to maximize Idril, and she's easier in order with regard to the because Gollum, his abilities with like the evil stuff like that, there aren't too many evil characters that free to play people are gonna have, and if they have them, it's hard to really it's hard to 7-star them. It's harder to because they're only in warlords or as rewards from tournaments. So this is one of those where the accessibility is the difference maker. I consider them fairly, because if they were equally accessible, I would probably put Gollum above there, even despite the fact that the Shelob coordination is a little more difficult. Then Lothariel, Torvin, boom. Let's go on to Mages. This one's a little lengthier, so bear with me. Karnan, and again, I have not played the console version, the computer version, because I'm waiting for a big Steam sale, and then I'm gonna get it. Yay! I have other games to keep me occupied until that happens. So, Karnan, going with Karnan. Karnan, his for clearing, his first ability works well with ranged allies in scenarios because. So it's not a stun. It's inferior to a stun because a stun, it's stuck and it can't do anything. The first ability for Karnan keeps them in place, but if they're melee, they can still hit you. So I guess it's better against an unstoppable orc, and that's like the one exception. But other than that, it's basically an inferior stun. So it coordinates well with ranged allies. But frankly, that should probably be in the cons category of first ability only works well. It works really well with ranged allies to keep them out of range of the damage. Third ability, like Gorvin, requires him to take damage, which stinks. And the fourth ability, he, gets benefits from being with other Maiar, which makes sense. But who's gonna run like a 4 Maiar team? That would be so dumb for a balanced team comp for trying to clear scenarios. I could have easily given him a 4 here. I do not love Karnan. There you go. Galadriel is great. I love Galadriel. She has incredible AoE damage output, even at level difficulties. She will, if you have saved up her primary ability for the second or third scene in a scenario, she's probably gonna clear anything but like the super tanky trolls and stuff if you launch it right at the beginning. So that's huge for the survivability of your team, and it'll at least take out the back line. And that's it kind of doesn't have the disadvantage that Talion has, because with Talion that's only going to work really against below ability characters, but with Galadriel she can definitely do it at level as well. She can get that wave clear for you. The main thing is fourth ability doesn't apply to many free-to-play characters. She herself is not really a free-to-play character. She's very difficult. It's possible you might have been able to unlock her unless you got lucky and pulled her character, but just through warlords and stuff and maybe a few shards here and there, you might have been able to unlock her if you didn't pay for one of her packs, but it's kind of the only way. Co-op arena, first ability doesn't. She's not as great at single target in scenarios. I think it makes up for it because her ability affects like the movement speed and the attack speed and stuff. So I feel like that she still warrants and her second ability, all of her abilities stack really well. She, if there are other elves around, then she gets boosted ability power. Her third ability gives her flat ability penetration. Both of her abilities do pretty good damage single target, and then incredible like AoE damage. So I feel like she definitely warrants a 1 there, but because there is so much damage you need to put on the boss and she's not amazing at single target, I thought she'd knock down to a 2 there. Gandalf the Grey. It's one of these burning people that works well with Celebrimbor. So the third ability works really well in scenarios in arena where you're facing a lot of characters. So he's going to be able to get that up pretty high as long as he keeps himself up. And his second ability will help him do that, but I'll get into that in a second here. Fourth ability works with a lot of characters. So a lot of like potential group synergy. Main thing is that his second ability will work so much better if it was controllable. I would easily switch those two abilities with each other, because being able to time that second one is so much more important than being able to time that first one. Obviously, stun doesn't affect arena bosses. He's not free to play, and he is pretty squishy, and he's a melee character, so he's one of those melee mages, right? So for clearing scenarios, I gave him a 3 on auto. He's got a 2 because he has some AoE potential. For the arena, he's just not that great because, again, like this, even if you are synergizing with Celebrimbor, the stun isn't going to work on the boss, and then his stun doesn't work on the boss. It's like 2 stuns that like don't work on the boss, which essentially like the programmers build that into kind of the overall quality of that ability. So if it's like, 7 out of the 10 value points of this ability come from damage and 3 from the effect, well, now you have like a 70% effective ability. Next, Saruman. Both abilities are great for mitigating damage. Being able to use that blind in order to prevent that is so helpful. He's on, if you made a sustain team, just a team that is not going to take much damage, it's totally going to be able to heal it, Saruman would definitely be a guy I would have on that team. It would be Baranor, Castamir, Lady Marwyn, and Saruman. That would be the squad. And his second ability, right, if one of those irritating little ninja guys, right, were to, pop to him, then he's going to pop that scream or shout. So now he's not going to be taking damage. You have time to get your tank over there to regain aggro, move him out of the way. Saruman's pretty stud. Main thing, that fourth ability doesn't apply to many free-to-play characters. You can't blind arena bosses, which is and you also can't terrify them and make them run. So both of his, kind of the same situation as Gandalf, where both of his abilities, the bonus benefit, don't really work. So his arena capability is effective. But when I was clearing stuff until I got to a point where Saruman couldn't keep up because he wasn't as farmable, kind of couldn't keep up with his star level, I was running Saruman, Galadriel, Lady Marwyn, and Baranor, and it was super easy to clear stuff, even if it was, again, 50% higher power on the enemies than my team. I really like Saruman, but he is pretty limited in arena. Shelob. She is ravenous orc bane. She is so good against that because of the poison effect reducing healing abilities of enemies. She has a self-heal, which helps her out if she does take some damage in the back line. But the main thing is no arena bosses have had healing so far, and we don't know if they would be able to be poisoned in a way that affected that. We don't even necessarily know if it would be able to affect them. So again, kind of like those other two characters, those effects don't contribute in arena. So she has an AoE, which is going to help you if you're doing those easy scenarios on auto, because you just want to actually get experience from all your energy and not just from scrolls. She is good for that. She is good for clearing scenarios, particularly ones with the Ravenous Orcs, which can be a bit of a pain in the butt. So if you stack her with like an orc that has Healer's Bane on it, where's my thumb? You're cooking. You're gonna be able to burn that thing out really fast, relative to if you didn't have her. Zog. So this is one of I referenced in the last video. There are two characters that are going to be great for PvP, and Elrond is kind of like the counter to them. Zog is one of them. Cursed is almost like a cursed ability. It's great for PvP. It essentially doesn't matter in PvE content, particularly arena. Like it might have been valuable for me to even swap these two. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna even do that right now. That might even been the way I meant to have it in my head. Fourth ability has virtually no characters that works with it. He's so inaccessible. He does have a self-heal, which is helpful for keeping him up. He is going to be great in PvP content. Because mainly that second ability could possibly proc before anyone's primaries are up. So he could make it so someone wasn't able to generate ability bar and then be able to throw like cursed on them and further prevent them, so like you can make it so the healer never got their ability up if that happened to be who they automatically targeted. I would say that probably the best strategy is going to be, unless you have him and the other curse character who we'll talk about in the tank section, the best strategy is probably going to be, unless someone's holding onto the ability, which just seems stupid in most cases, but assuming that your opponent in PvP, whether it's RTA or not, because I'm assuming that the AI is going to be programmed to essentially work the same way as it currently does in scenarios. So it will generally use the ability right after it's up or after one more basic attack. So you'll probably want to use your primary ability on whoever the second ability procced on, if it did proc before your first one filled. But again, for PvE content, he's really limited. You can see a lot of mages have the thing of not that great, because since they're mages, right, they have all these effects that they're putting on, but that a lot of the effects don't affect the arena bosses. So Galadriel gets top marks in the mage category. Saruman second, Gandalf the Grey, then Shelob, Zog. When PvP is released, Zog is jumping up this list for kind of like an overall ranking, and he's definitely at least number 3 at that point. But we don't have PvP content yet. It's still, coming soon or whatever it says on the map. So, tanks. Here we are. The final one. We have made it. Stick with me. There's a few tanks. Aslar. His abilities stack well together. They're all oriented around the reducing the armor of opponents. So you're going to have really broken armors on your opponents. Main thing is he has no taunt for PvE content. It's not even like Gimli, where it's like, oh, it's only it's the proc ability. It's not the targetable ability. So he literally has no taunt. So if he's your only melee character, he's still gonna operate pretty effectively as a tank. But if you have even one melee character, it could be a bit tricky. It's going to require more attention at least. And the fourth ability applies to only other orc characters. Just not that many right now. Yeah. Next, Baronor. I'm a sucker for Baronor. The people at WB were nice and gave us a really good, easy to access and maximize tank. I'm so close to having him 7-starred. For those of you who don't know, like, I put a little money into the game, but not like that much money into the game, and so I'm still working. I'm almost at my first 7-star character ready to go. because I'm holding on to it obviously until the next power tournament. If you have power tournament, if you are leveling your characters outside of like I need to progress in the scenarios or to get the daily achievement, you need to wait for a power tournament because it frankly like, and even then, even if you are trying to get through scenarios, you're probably better off just continuing to kind of farm the things you can get and just saving all that for the power tournaments, because you do get some pretty incredible rewards if you rank high in the tournaments. You have new characters. Like I have Boromir and Gollum when I have no business having them because my guild is smart and awesome, and there you go. So Baronor, great survivability. Again, it's better to have good ability defense and armor than it is to have good dodge. He has solid dodge. He's great at armor and ability to defense. He's a super accessible free-to-play character, like, you know, in that category, in that top tier of accessibility. He's in the Spoils of War pulls. He is in Warlord missions, and he's in hard modes. I mean, you won't be able to get him right off the bat whenever you're starting because his hard modes are a little farther along than like Castamir's are, who's like the first person you get a hard mode for, but this didn't take me that long to get to Baronor. Main thing, that taunt doesn't work on arena bosses. He's still not bad for scenarios on auto because his second ability and his first ability are both AoE, and if you're fighting things that are pretty low, that's gonna kill anything that's around him. So he's still pretty good. He's a really good option there, especially if you do kind of like, hey, I can definitely clear this on auto, but probably not if I run with all squishies. Throw in Baronor in there, and you're definitely still clearing that. So co-op arena, the taunting does help for kind of managing the kind of the different places the waves are coming from, and for putting out some damage on them. But obviously the taunt doesn't work on the arena boss itself, so that kind of limits his potential there. Moving on to Baronor, Boromir, I think he has the best, if you're thinking about it, the best first ability for arena. Out of the tanks, and if you it's hard to say like, oh, that it's better than Lady Marwyn's heal or something like that. But it's in that category of top arena abilities, and I'll tell you why. He has like solid survivability, but two, basically like what I would do, and I'm literally saving on unlocking my Boromir, who's like sitting there with like 150 or whatever shards until the next power tournament. So I like some of these characters I don't own and I haven't used, but I've seen other people use them, understand their abilities, and so I feel comfortable making these rankings. But what I will do whenever I have Boromir unlocked after the next power tournament, after I've geared him up a bit, basically I would run him up to the top with the horn, ready to go. Whenever that, from like the top area of the screen, I would just run him up there, pop the horn, right? Have them run for 2 seconds in the opposite direction, and take it 2 seconds more to come down, and then I just rejoin my crew and kind of help defend the back line if anything was attacking on the back line, and then set myself up to be a tank for that northern crew when they come in, like those 4 seconds later. So that just helps to kind of keep it into like 2 separate waves instead of one wave hitting at once. I just feel like that's a pretty smart way to do that. I love the idea of that. He has no taunt. Where am I from? He has no taunt, which limits the PvE content capabilities, really. Again, unless you're running a like 3-ranged and Boromir situation, kind of like Aslar. His stun doesn't work against the arena bosses. That's what it's in arena bosses. And the first ability only really syncs well with ranged DPS, and this is the main thing to where I'm like, Baronor is clearly the better PvE tank. When Boromir does his horn, that's going to send it out of range of any melee characters. It might send it out of range of range characters. You can kind of micromanage and things in order to make that happen. Baranor's, obviously he's still taking damage during that time, but also you're able to continue doing damage to those opponents during that time, and the damage is going on a unit that's really built to take damage. Next, Gimli. His first ability helps regenerate his first ability faster. So it's just one of those, basically, he's a tank, he's always going to have like some HP to bring back, and just like spam that thing. As soon as that comes up, you can pop it, and that makes it a really efficient ability, right? Sometimes you might be tempted on Lady Marwyn if only your tank, right, is taking some damage to see if, are we going to have some backline damage here from one of the assassins or one of the spear throwers. If you wait on that, then you're not getting the most out of that ability, because you're not stacking up the ability again after having used it, so it's wasted kind of progress towards your next ability, which affects your overall healing output. So Gimli does not have that problem. Main thing is he does have a taunt, but it's not controllable. And there's pretty much never a time, like, if you could have your tank freaking like magically walking around and taunting the whole time, that would be good in almost any situation, with the almost any being kind of like where you need a split tank because he's taking too much damage. You need to shift to Castamere for a little bit, and until you can throw the shield back on them and have them retake aggro. And then not many free-to-play allies for the fourth ability, the elves. So since taunts don't matter against the arena bosses, who are the primary things that are going to kill you. Again, if you're having difficulty with the waves, the boss was going to kill you anyway. So getting through the waves is a less significant contribution to that. Score. Hammer of Sauron, right? So at the bottom here we have our two main difficult to access characters. Hammer of Sauron is solid in PvE content, but the ability effects of both do not apply to arena bosses. He's not gonna knock back some huge Balroggy thing. He's not gonna stun some huge Balroggy thing. So he's solid in PvE content. His knockback does have the same issue as the Horn of Gondor and all that. So it works better with range DPS. With regards to the knockback, because otherwise he's going to put it out of the range of the melee DPS. His fourth ability doesn't work with free-to-play characters. It's like only pay-to-play, pay-to-win characters. So he's solid in PvE content. I could see him being good in PvP. A lot of these evil characters, to me, seem more PvP oriented whenever that happens. But until then, they ain't got that benefit for you, because there ain't none. So Helm of Hammerhand, one of those again, will be great in PvP content. You'll essentially be able to you'll be able to focus on a target that you want to take out first, whether it's a healer, whether it's a backline DPS. You will be able to make sure that healer doesn't get their heal off, that backline DPS doesn't get their big move off, and to the point to where you've probably killed them before they're out of curse. That's awesome. But this is gonna be one other character. His fourth ability currently only applies to one other character, and the curse doesn't work against arena bosses, so he's terrible for arena. He will be amazing in PvP content. Until that happens, he's really not that useful, other than giving you another character in arena to kind of experience up and get those bonuses from. So for the overall rankings, I do give the edge to Baranor for sure over Boromir. Boromir's a definite second. Then I give it to 3 on Gimli, and Gimli and Aslar are kind of similarly tiered, but to me, Gimli's definitely still the head above there. Hammer of Sauron, and then Helm of Hammerhand. Again, as soon as PvP's a thing, he's in the Baranor and Boromir tier for sure. And I feel like it looks kind of dumb. If you go through my rankings, like Aragorn's ranked high, Arwen and Legolas are ranked high. But other than that, a lot of the paid characters don't really make it that high for me because they seem more PvP oriented. Most of these evil characters, they seem better suited for PvP, and we don't have PvP yet. So I would, if you're someone who is like kind of put more money into the game, it's like, oh crap, what's with all these freaking, free to play characters? I could have gotten, if you wanted to run, Lady Marwyn, Castamere, Idril, and Baranor, that's gonna be able to get you through a lot of scenario content. You're at least gonna be able to get through the first 3 towers. So you're going to be able to get to Zaragost and not have put a dime into the game. But as PvP comes out, and PvP will definitely, if they're smart and if they follow suit with every other game that's done PvP content, like you will be able to get kind of like exclusive rewards or really significant awards. Usually it'll probably be like either a bunch of gems or they'll some kind of currency, in-game currency. So there will be benefit for that. It's just not here yet. And it says it's coming soon. It's been coming soon for months, but it still says it's coming soon. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to share the link to the sheet in the description. I forgot to say in the other video, but I'm not going to re-record that. Just say that. I'll just put it in the info. And yeah, I'd love to have your thoughts. If you're like, hey man, I feel like you've really kind of undervalued this character, or something like that. I work really well off of bouncing off info with people, and so who knows, you might result your contribution and result in an updated video. Anyway, have fun out there, guys, and we'll see you next time.